Welcome to Follow the Money. I'm China Barachina. Let us explore the tools and insights you need to jumpstart your financial journey. Only 7 to 10% of Filipinos belong to the upper middle class, but they shape how we dress, where we eat, and even how we define success. Are they quietly investing in condos, stocks, and crypto, or just living paycheck to paycheck, but looking sosyal? As Warren Buffett says, if you buy things you don't need, you'll soon be selling the things you do need. This afternoon on Follow the Money, we're diving into how the Filipino upper middle class really spends, saves, and sometimes splurges. With me is John Paolo Rivera, Senior Research Fellow at the Philippine Institute for Development Studies. Hi, JP!
Hi, good afternoon. Magandang hapon sa inyong lahat.
Yeah, we are supposed to be in the show right now in the studio, but yeah, traffic is so bad right now. I think the ones watching us in the area of Ortigas and along EDSA will be able to say that it's true. So, Paolo, let's kick things off. Who exactly are the Filipino upper middle class?
Well, by definition, the Filipino upper middle income class are those households, well, depending on household size, are the one who's generally on the average earning around 100,000 to 150,000 pesos per month. Mm-hmm. And then they are the one who's actually comprising around 7 to 10% of the population.
Okay, so it is roughly for 110 million Filipinos, so roughly they're about, how much? Like 10, 11? Around
that number.
Yeah. So in terms of spending behavior and lifestyle, how does this upper middle class drive their lifestyle and spending behavior on a monthly basis?
Well, based on the family income and expenditure survey, the upper middle income class are actually spending on both material goods and also on experiences like travel and the like. And this segment of the population is actually also spending on capital goods and particularly in investment items such as property, plant, equipment, even gadgets, mm-hmm. on top of the non-tangible or the experiential part of consumption.
Okay. I'm feeling like sosyal today, so let's taglish and let's talk about gastos more. Are there upper middle class more into lifestyle spending, as you mentioned? And how is it different from like a middle class to an upper class? Like how do we define it? Is it the brand? Is it the, how do we define the difference between like the two up and down in that level?
Well, the upper middle income class, they're actually not that rich, but they have the financial flexibility. Mm-hmm. Unlike the lower middle income class, wherein the purchasing power is quite limited, but the mm-hmm. upper middle income class, they can actually spend with flexibility. That's why it allows them to actually spend or consume on both tangible and intangible, invest in certain assets, and at the same time spend on experiences like travel.
Oh, okay. So are they the type of class where you can see them traveling more, like in a span of 1 year? Like in 1 year, how many times does this class travel in a year? Like for them?
Well, notwithstanding the revenge travel that has been mm-hmm. in the discussion since after the pandemic, mm-hmm. the upper middle income class have actually the flexibility to do travel, both domestic and international. There mm-hmm. is data indicating that travel, inbound and outbound travel have been growing, and that is particularly driven by this segment of the population due to their increased or relatively higher purchasing power compared to other segments of the middle class.
We were told that the disposable income has been increasing in the Philippines. Are they the type that that is directly related to this increase, or will it range from middle up above? So, are they in the sweet spot in that particular report that we are receiving right now as of the moment?
Well, actually, that would depend because mm-hmm. there are certain segments of the population that are being subjected to what we call lifestyle inflation.
Okay.
And a lot of the middle class population are into that, so that when income increases, when purchasing power increases, there is a tendency for them to inflate lifestyle. But not everyone is undergoing that, because those segment of that population who are actually highly financially literate, then there are options for them. There are certain directions wherein they put their money on value creating investments. So they put it on real estate, they put it on jewelry, they put it on certain items that increases value over time, like watches.
Okay. Oh, like, is that I mean, the likes of Rolex, the likes of Patek, like
Yeah, something like
Hublot?
that.
Okay.
Those investment items that actually create value, that increases value over time, especially those items that increases in value once you put them out of the shop store.
So let's talk about luxury bags, because it's the same thing, right? So if you buy, for example, if you buy a YSL belt, it actually increases once you take it out because of the leather, same as Chanel and Hermes. So but is this something that would upper middle class would like target, or is it like in a higher like middle upper class income when it comes to like the likes of Hermes?
Well, actually, the literature is very clear that it is actually subject to certain conditions. No? And this condition is anchored on what we call motivation. Motivation for the type of purchase, motivation for the kind of purchase that individuals are undertaking. Like, for example, there are certain segments of the population that would buy luxury items with the motivation of actually allowing it to increase in value because of the scarcity that the purchased product would bring them, like those one-of-a-kind products. However, there is also this certain motivation wherein, and this is very common, common among developing countries, wherein products tend to be aspirational. And certain segment of the population would like to go up to the higher tier of the income classification, and maybe a stepping stone, for the lack of better term, or a ladder towards that is to be able to feel how it is to be on the upper segment of the income, therefore allowing them to be actually motivated by purchasing items that are for the higher target segment in
Can
terms
you
of income.
can you say that this segment are kind of pressure in the term status symbol when it comes, especially with social media, and talking about the status symbol and social media? How old is this population? Like, what is their age range? Because it's different when we talk about segment, but it's also different when we talk about like the generation that is under it, right?
Well, in terms of generational purchases, the younger generation are more into the experience, and they're actually buying the experience. But for the older generation, this kind of quote-unquote flex would come in the form of purchasing high-value items, jewelries, properties, and so on. So this differential in terms of luxury purchases would actually indicate the kind of which age group do you belong, and it also points us to the level of income an individual is actually earning at this point in time. So the younger generation are into this more experiential, intangible, because as of their age group, in terms of their job, if they're employed right now, it is actually what their purchasing power can actually afford. Unlike the older generation, whose income streams are kind of multiple, some are second streams of income, others actually self-generating income. So they have the greater flexibility to be able to invest in greater value items.
Does it vary when it comes to age range, JP? When, for example, a 25-year-old new money na tinatawag, di ba? And they probably earn their living in drop shopping or like online affiliates on TikTok. How would you define that? Because that will be an upper middle class if they're getting something out of those social media, versus an upper middle class with a family, say for example in their 40s. In terms of like budgeting, what is the current pressure? Are there a lot of pressure to look in successfully, meaning stretching their budget? and flexing na sinasabi mo nga, it's flexing the product that they possess, or they would rather be silent when it comes to possession, and for the older people, or I mean for the older generation, how this two generation varies when it comes to spending?
Well, again, I would like to emphasize again the motivation and the available purchasing power that each generation has. So, again, going back to our discussion earlier on aspiration, the younger generation are actually aspiring for the luxury, for the comforts that they are seeing to their older counterparts, to the older generation. And the fact that they're aspiring something, they would be able to find ways to generate income, so that at the very least, they would be able to get a feel of how it is to be in an upper income level. And because of the type of income generating opportunities that they have, the approaches would be different. However, the direction might be the same. It's just that they would differ in terms of how they actually purchase the product and how they intend to use it for their own purposes.
When you say it depends, right? Let's talk about more on luho. And then I've seen that there are like sneakers that being bought at a certain price and then will be, flipped, na tinatawag nila, they flip it to a higher value. And sometimes it's like times 10. And even if it's not, can you consider this as investment? Because the value increases?
Well, it has something to do with what we call store of value. If an individual finds that a certain product or a certain item would be able to store value for them in the future, then there is an incentive for them to actually purchase it. Because purchasing it, I have the product, I will keep the product, but over time, it is actually storing value, like those one-of-a-kind rubber shoes, one-of-a-kind watches. So the fact that they can store value, in the future, there is an incentive for me to actually flip it, sell it, with the expectation that I will be able to sell it at a higher value compared to when I was able to purchase it.
All right. So, guys, well, let's hear more about that, JP. We're just warming up. Follow the Money Returns after a short break. Welcome back to Follow the Money. Still with us is John Paolo Rivera, Senior Research Fellow at the Philippine Institute for Development Studies. He's helping us unpack the spending habits, social pressures, and money moves of the Filipino upper middle class, a small group with an outsized influence on how we live, spend, and define success. So, Paolo, in your view, are Filipinos in the upper middle class buying luxury items as investment, or more on status symbol or social media flexing?
Again, based on our discussion earlier, it can be both, and it would depend on the objective and motivation of the individual. And that would also play into the role of being part of a certain generation that has a different perspective on how spending and products should be.
And talking about those luxury items, when they buy it on credit, kasi it's simple to say that if you're buying it on cash, then it is most likely it's an investment. But however, if this luxury was on credit, like loans or credit cards, does that turn to a so-called investment? Or is it going to be a bad financial decision?
Well, purchasing certain products on credit is not necessarily good, and it is not also necessarily bad. It would actually depend on, the objective of why you're actually purchasing a particular product. Like for example, if you're going to use credit card to buy a luxury item, then we have to ask a very critical question whether this particular luxury item is actually a store of value. Can this store value, or will the value appreciate in the future?
So,
because buying something on credit, whether it is zero in interest or with a corresponding low interest as what's being offered by certain banks, it would still boil down on you not being able to use your money elsewhere on something that is more productive. So it's actually a toss. It is actually a decision point where an individual would have to make a decision whether The fund's liquidity would have to be directed towards a particular luxury item or be spent elsewhere like entrepreneurship, investment in stocks, for example, or in other financial instruments.
Okay, so because it is making me think right now. For example, you bought it in a very good 0% interest, and if it's incurring value over time, and the value that you paid for it doesn't increase because there's no interest, is that a good deal in terms of investment? And you're not like putting your money outright.
Well, I would like to answer that now in terms of what we call opportunity cost of holding money. Right? So opportunity cost of holding money, meaning if you actually spent money on something that is, let's say a consumer product, a luxury consumer product, the opportunity cost of that would be you will not anymore be able to put it elsewhere, no? Maybe in an interest earning investment or in a particular venture that will allow you to gain a certain return, no? Some sort of an investment.
So maybe the comparison will be the value that will increase in that particular time versus another opportunity of investment, no? In terms of increase. So talking about more on credit cards, now this is a big topic. If there's one group prone to debt, it's often the middle and upper middle class. So Paolo, from what you see, are Filipinos in this segment getting more into good debt like business loans or real estate, or bad debt like swiping the credit card for gadgets, trips, or luxury?
Well, there's a saying in finance wherein in making a certain investment decision, it would always be best for you to actually use what we call OPM. OPM, not original Filipino music, but it actually stands for other people's money. Okay? And in using other people's money, of course, there will be interest when you use other people's money. But because it is an investment venture, you just have to make sure that the venture where you will put OPM or other people's money or the money that you borrowed would actually generate you returns that will allow you to cover the interest payments that you have. And it is quite a very tough decision because you need to find an investment activity or an investment product that will allow you to generate returns far greater than the interest being levied on you.
I see.
And that would be a good debt. That would be a good debt because you're putting money on something that will allow you to make more money. And it would be some sort of a bad debt if you're only using money to actually buy something that will not get you more money. It's more of a liability.
Okay.
It's more of a liability. Because the reason why we're using credit, the reason why we're using our credit line is for us to be able to derive more value from using other people's money. Because there will always be an interest. There will be an opportunity cost of holding and not holding money.
So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's zero interest, it's really zero interest. But what you're trying to say between good debt and bad debt, like for our viewers today, is good debt is something that you borrowed, but you're generating cash flow from it. And then the bad debt is just like you're paying it out. Is that how you define it?
Maybe in a shorter, that's correct, but maybe in a shorter term, a good debt is actually an investment that will get you return. But a bad debt would be using other people's money for expenses. I mean, there is a difference between an investment and an expense.
I see. So in terms of like, do you think the pressure to keep up appearances pushes people into bad debt, or any red flags people should watch for?
Well, that can be a red flag because again, no, the motivation is actually different. No? If the motivation of an individual to actually borrow money, use other people's money, is to be able to project an image that they are not actually that, then that may be problematic. Because the problem here would be you will be eaten up. Your purchasing power would be eaten up by the interest payments that you have to pay because you borrowed other people's money or you use other people's money. Again, it is something that should be able to allow you to generate more funding, more money, more cash flows, so that you would be on the safe side. It will be too risky to borrow money to finance expenses.
So in terms of like spending, we've talked about spending. Now let's talk about more on the investment, the traditional ones. Are the Filipinos in the upper middle class getting more interested in things like stocks, or crypto, or do you still prefer safe bets like real estate or bonds or digital wallets, so to see that has like 4% and up a savings account? What do you think?
I would like to take that question from a generational perspective. The older generation are still, well, data is showing that the older generation are still into the safe assets like real estate, those tangible, real properties, real assets, tangible assets. But the younger generation tend to be more risky than the older generation because they tend to invest immediately on highly risky assets like cryptocurrency, stocks, and so on.
As they should be, right? Because they have more time to take risk.
They have more time to take risks, and they have the appetite. But again, no, it is very subjective, and we cannot really conclude across the board because individuals would have varying risk appetite. Even younger generations, there are some of them who are very risk averse, but it's just that majority may tend to be risk taker, as evidenced by the number of younger generation actually patronizing those risky investments. But of course, as what's commonly said in finance, the higher the risk, the higher would be the return.
All right. So thank you for that. But I want you to complete this sentence as a tradition for Follow the Money. Money follows when blank.
Oh, okay. So money follows those who make a relationship with money.
Oh.
And when I say having a relationship with money, what I mean there is that if you have a relationship with money, you actually make money work for you instead of you working for money.
All right. So let's go to rapid fire question. So you don't have to explain, just give the what's on your mind right away. So number one, luxury item you think is actually good investment. What item?
It depends.
Just one. Give me one.
Give me one luxury item. Good for investment. Watches.
Okay. Biggest financial mistake upper middle class Filipinos make.
Buying for projection.
If you have 1 million extra right now, where would you put it?
I will put it on three things: land, gold, and parking slot.
Oh, parking slot. Good point. One financial advice you wish every Filipino would follow.
One financial advice would be the classic: do not spend money that you do not have yet.
Nice. And last but not the least, how do you complete this sentence? Money is the root of all blank for you.
That's kind of challenging, but money is the root of all. Money is the root of all satisfaction.
All right. Thank you, John Paolo Rivera, Senior Research Fellow at the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, for joining us on Follow the Money, your insights into how the Filipino upper middle class spends, invests, and sometimes overextends, gave us a sharper lens into what's driving our consumer culture and economic future. Thank you, JP.
Thank you very much. Until next time.
Before we go, an excerpt from the author of the book, The Psychology of Money. Morgan Housel, Morgan Housel, $81.5 billion of Warren Buffett, $84.5 billion net worth came after his 65th birthday. His skill is investing, but his secret is time. That's how compounding works. That's it for today's edition of Follow the Money. I'm China Barachina. Thanks for watching and keep it here on BNC, the Bilyonaryo News Channel.